afternoon and evening to everybody again. We come now to the heart of the program, and it's probably the least interesting part of the program. So you're going to have to bear with us on this one. I'm going to ask Firoza, who is on the working group and hasn't spoken yet, and she's spent such a lot of effort and time on the Constitution, to do the first two slides, and then I'll take over. And just to say, Barbara also has played an important role in developing this Constitution. Barbara. Firoza, are you there to do the slides? I can't see what you're doing, but I've got my PowerPoint in front of me.
Thank you, Chris. I'm here.
Okay, please go ahead.
Thank you, and a very good day to everybody, morning, afternoon, or evening. You have your pick. And congratulations once again for yesterday, and we hope today is going to be as successful. So we start with the Constitution, as Chris said, and I'm so happy to hear what Rananaji said and gave us all those lessons. And I think many of them we've already taken into account while drafting and redrafting this Constitution for HomeNet International. As you know, this whole process started way back in May 2018 at Stockholm, when the 5 regional networks met and decided that we must move now on a global network for home-based workers. But more importantly, we also agreed, I think from a past experience, that we must have an extensive consultation process with home-based workers in the drafting and in the formulation of an international network for home-based workers. So we started with something called a discussion document. And in fact, there were 3 versions of the discussion document. So at every stage, we sent it out to the members through the regional representatives to look at the discussion document and give their opinion. So at various stages, we passed through many. So if you see on the slide here, in 2018, we finalized the vision, purpose, and principles that were mentioned in the vision document. Then we had many working group meetings, one important one in November 2018, when we discussed at length the membership issue, but it was unresolved. But later on, the next year, we did resolve it. In 2019, we see that this was a very important step where we requested Barbaro, who very kindly did a very comprehensive research of various global networks and helped us think through what could be the structure and the role of HomeNet International. So Barbaro, thank you so much for helping us. This is a lot of your time and a lot of your experience has gone into this and helped us. This was in the first quarter of 2019. Later on in May, we agreed about the affiliations. That was a big decision we had to take. Who would be the affiliates? And as you know, it is only MBOs, only membership-based organizations can become affiliates of HomeNet International, or they should work as MBOs, because sometimes registration is difficult in some regions. And also we said that the regional networks should have a strong role, but they are not members of HomeNet International. They are not affiliates. In August of 2019, we had the first draft circulated, comments received. Later on, the second draft in October. And at every stage of the drafts, we again consulted with the workers and tried to get as much feedback as possible. In 2020, we had the third draft again and the fourth draft, which was, I'm not going to go into the dates, etc., but just to show that we have this development of the Constitution has undergone a number of consultations and a number of drafts. And we've tried to include the points of view of everyone. And in the beginning of this year, since by then we had affiliates, we had some new affiliates also. So we again shared the fourth draft, and there are a few suggestions for changes, which Chris will take up. So this is very quickly a diagram of the HomeNet International structure and functions. As we can see, there are three basic structures: the Congress, the Executive Committee, and the Secretariat. So the Congress, as we know, is the highest decision-making body. It looks at reports, it makes the Constitution, it adopts constitutions and their amendments, and it plays an important role in planning and programs of HomeNet International and the election of the office bearers. Now, who comprise the Congress? The Congress is actually all the delegates, all the affiliates, and each affiliate has a certain number of delegates that they can send to the Congress depending on the size. Chris will go into that, so I'm not going to dwell on this anymore, but between 1 to 3 delegates per affiliate, depending on the number of home-based workers that they have. And then we have the regional representatives who will also be part of the Congress, but ex officio, so they don't have voting rights. And Congress meets every 4 years. That's the plan. The next important structure is the Executive Committee. The Executive Committee comprises of 2 representatives from each of the affiliates in each of the 5 regions. And this includes the Executive Committee. From within the Executive Committee, there will be a president, vice president, and treasurer. And I think there's some discussion and some suggestions about increasing that, but we'll come to that later. Then there'll be the international coordinator, who will be ex officio, part of the Executive Committee, and 1 rep per region as ex officio again. Now, the Executive Committee, we hope, will be meeting at least twice a year, and the office bearers may meet more than that. They will be looking after the governance, all management of HomeNet International between congresses, because Congress will meet every 4 years. So in between, we will need a smaller group to look at the management of it. And to help all this, there will be a secretariat of the international coordinator and a small staff to look after coordination, admin, and finance matters. And the heart of this whole structure, if I may say, are the affiliates themselves, are the home-based worker membership-based organizations. So they will come from all the regions once they fulfill criteria, and they will be accepted by the Executive Committee. And since we don't have an Executive Committee right now, yesterday the Congress endorsed the affiliation of 36 membership-based organizations. They will, of course, be the heart and soul of it. And then the next structure is the regions. So the regional networks like HomeNet Southeast Asia, HomeNet South Asia, etc., the Africa platform and Coordinadora ALAC will also be very involved in this whole process. They'll be, as we have mentioned, in the Congress, in the Executive Committee, but they will not have voting rights. They will be there to organize, mobilize, and support the affiliates in their work and report back to the Congress. Thank you.
We've had a look yesterday. We looked at parts of the Constitution, actually. We looked at the criteria for affiliation when Edward presented. And Feroz has taken us through the heart of the Constitution, which is the structure and the key functions. So what I'm going to do now, with your permission, I have put on the PowerPoint the whole constitution. Unfortunately, it makes it a bit small. And I've done that so we can scroll through it for those who haven't really had a chance to look. So you can see the structure of the constitution, but I'm not going to go into any detail. You'll have to read that yourself if you haven't done so. I'm aware that all the delegates in their regions have really taken an interest in this constitution now. So they will know about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through draft 4 constitution, which we'd hope to adopt and do the amendments at the physical Congress. But of course, things never work out like that. And the affiliates said, no, we have suggestions. So those suggestions are the ones we are tabling. But any big issue that needs an awful lot of discussion amongst all the affiliates, that we hope will be discussed in the next few months, and that will be discussed at the physical Congress. So what we're looking at are some quite small but important changes to that draft. One other apology I must make is that there's some numbering gone a little bit wrong in your document pack, so bear with me. The content is the same. Okay, so Demetria, go to the first slide. I'm working off my own, so I can't see what you're doing. Okay, so here we are, proposed changes to the 4th draft constitution. Okay, so like any constitution, we start with a preamble, and there was an important amendment made in the very first sentence. So we, the members of HomeNet International, are committed to build the unity and solidarity of home-based workers, especially women home-based workers, and their organizations. And of course, we heard this morning how important organizations are. So in red, that's one amendment. And then there's another in 1.1, the last sentence describing who are the home-based workers. They could be either self-employed own account workers or subcontracted workers, including piece rate workers or both. So a clarification there on the preamble. And you see we go to the key principles. Can we have the next slide, please? Okay, and there's a whole range of key principles. And as we said, a lot of these were not finalized, but were agreed in the very first discussion document, and they've been refined, as you can see. So here we go. So non-discrimination on the basis of class was added, very important. Gender, race, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, and all other forms of discrimination is a key guiding principle. There's a whole list in many of the treaties and conventions, etc., but we couldn't put them all in, so all other forms of discrimination is a principle. However, it's recognized that globally, at least, and see we move the 80% to 57% based on the new figures of home-based workers are women. Probably in our constituency, the number is much higher, but in the world figures, 57%. And this bit's been strengthened. So gender equality and women empowerment are a priority, and the leadership of HomeNet International reflect this reality. So that was beefed up, made stronger. Then we go to the next one, number F here. Diversity and flexibility across regions will have to be factored in, reflecting the differences in the organizational forms, culture, level of government, recognition, organizational development, political situation, etc. of home-based workers. This, Renana talked about difference, okay? And we see there are many differences, size, and this is such an important point if we're going to build that trust amongst ourselves. So the suggestion was to move it higher up in the list to denote its importance. And then H, solidarity with other workers in formal and informal employment, including employees, subcontracted workers, and the self-employed, and other allies will be a guiding principle. Again, this was a requested clarification because terms often mean different things in different continents. So that's a clarification. Okay, I hope you're all still with me. I'm going very fast. I'm not intending for us to adopt everything individually because it will take us 2 hours. So Hope you're keeping your notes in case there's anything you're not happy with. Okay, so Dimitri, let's go to the next slide. After the name, the next big section in the Constitution is the objectives. And you'll see there's not much change here. If you look at the red part there, instead of saying help strengthen, we've said support the strengthening of. People felt that help was a bit patronizing, so it's better to talk about support and facilitation. So we've made those amendments right through. So this one is support the strengthening of democratic and accountable country-based, home-based worker organization that protect home-based workers' rights everywhere. You look a bit further down, we've got the same kind of thing, support establishing such regional organizations, talking about when there's no regional organization. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, and then there's methods and activities. And again, if you see, we've got, instead of help, we've got facilitate the strengthening of existing regional networks and organizations, and support the formation of new regional networks organization where none exist. And then a little bit further down, another clarification, a little strengthening of the method, engage in and promotes research and sex disaggregated data collection and statistics and the contribution of home-based workers, including in global supply chains. Okay, so that's a strengthening, and we heard yesterday about the power of statistics. Next page. The next page talks about the affiliates, and there seem to be no changes here because this is a major kind of issue. As you remember, it came up with Renana, who should be the members. It was a bit of a sticking point in our constitution at first, and we heard about this yesterday. So there's nothing, no changes there, nor on the next page, all about the affiliates. On the next page, there's a clarification about affiliation fees, and Poonsap is going to present the details a little bit later. So this is to clarify. Affiliates will pay a joining fee on affiliating to HomeNet International and an annual affiliation fee, preferably in the first quarter of the following year. And it's based on the size of the membership using the categories outlined in clause 8.3b. So 8.3b distinguishes 3 levels of membership: 50 to 500, 501 to 1,000, and over 1,000. So the affiliation fee should make a difference along those 3 levels. We've got organizational structures. Again, we've just looked at the structures. There's no change there. And not on the next page. This is all about the Congress. Decision making. I'm moving, Dimitri, I hope you're with me. I'm on the executive committee, point 9. No change there. Although I will make a comment about that later. Executive committee members, I'm looking at now from the regions. A very important point here. Prior to Congress, the HomeNet International affiliates in each electoral region will agree upon their 2 executive committee members who must come from 2 different countries in accordance with the procedures decided upon by the executive. The important point is, yes, we want to spread. We want to make sure as many representatives from different parts are included. So thank you for that amendment. Okay, next page, Demetria. Nothing else on these about the executive committee. This is still the executive committee, no changes. Then the office bearers. No changes here. As I said, there is a suggestion here, which I'll talk to later. Nothing on the next slide. Next slide, the international coordinator. Nothing on that slide. Regional networks and organizations, this next slide, no changes. Next slide, duties of affiliates, no changes. On the next slide, just before funds, we have, again, the issue of changing help to support. So we have support the development of a spirit and practice of solidarity by contributing, sharing resources such as skills, materials, and finances for joint global activities. And remember what Renana said about money and transparency. And yes, so a very important duty. I think that's very important. Okay, and then on funds, there's no further change to the Constitution. Okay, so interpretation and amendments. This was unclear to some delegates, and they suggested to beef this up again to make it more clear. So the interpretation of the Constitution is the responsibility for the interpretation of the clauses in the Constitution are vested in Congress. In between Congresses, the executive committee shall be empowered to propose an interpretation of the Constitution to be circulated electronically to affiliates for a decision, which will require 75% of those affiliates who respond to agree to the interpretation, and which will be endorsed by the next Congress. So that's a safeguard. The EXCO can't, make changes without lots of backup from the affiliates. And then there's an additional clause here, because, when we're discussing the Constitution, some of the things don't go in the Constitution, they rather go in the rules and policies. They're not something in a Constitution. So power to make rules in order to further the objectives of HomeNet International and operationalize the same, the executive committee will have the power to form subcommittees and make rules, and within the framework of the Constitution. Right, now the last slide on the Constitution is what I'm hoping we're going to adopt. But before we do that, this Constitution of HomeNet International is adopted by affiliates of the launch of HomeNet International at the Virtual Congress on 24th of February 2021. There is one more slide that looks at some of the issues that were referred, but maybe, Barbara, do you want to just create a little space here in case anybody's got anything that they want to ask? Only on the changes, please.
Thank you so much, Chris, for going through this, the Constitution and making it so clear to everybody. So my question is, does any of the delegates have any questions for clarification or for other reasons?
First of all, congratulations for launching HomeNet International. Just one point, it's a technical point. In the preamble, we have mentioned about the rate workers, after subcontractor workers, including piece rate workers, and in the key principle, I think we should add including piece rate workers.
Okay, thank you, Manali. Actually, I think it was raised and I don't think we put it in. So that's a technical point, thank you.
Any other questions?
I was looking at the presentation and there's something about the fees. We had mentioned the exemption for the founding members, the exemption of the affiliation fee. Was there any alteration at that point or regarding that point?
Thank you, Edelisa. Yes, that was the point raised by Latin America. When PUNSAP discusses the fees, because it's not something for the Constitution, right? The actual figure and those, exemptions, these are something that is a policy issue. So we'll discuss that when PUNSAP looks at the fees. Your proposal has been taken into consideration. Okay, so we'll come to that. Thank you for raising it, Edelisa. It is dealt with, but in the point after next.
Okay, if there are no other questions, maybe we should proceed to the adoption.
Hello. I do actually have a question. Hello, does anybody hear?
Yes, we can hear you. Who is that?
Armelia from Trade Union Rights Center. Hello.
Unfortunately, we are only taking questions and input from delegates at this point.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Sorry, Amelia.
We can put your question in the chat and we can see if we can come back to it. Okay, we don't want to open it up for a general discussion. And I know a lot of people haven't been involved in the process, but the regional delegates have been in an intense process. So if we open it up, we're going to get lots of questions. So please, thank you very much. If you really have a question, we'll try and answer it later in the chat. Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and read out the statement, and I'm hoping that, you know, this is going to be a really important moment for us. So here we go. This constitution of HomeNet International is adopted by affiliates at the launch of HomeNet International at the virtual Congress on the 24th of February, 2021.
So are there any agreements? Do everybody agree?
Yes.
Yes.
Agree.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Yes.
I can only hear yes. So I think we can consider the constitution unanimously adopted.
Okay, thank you very much, Barbara. We should have had a vote, but it was impossible. So I think we said that up front, and this is the reason, but thank you very much for that and all the hard work in the regions. This has been a process. Thank you very much. I'm just going to go to the last slide because there are other issues and I don't want people to feel we didn't deal with them. Okay, so these are issues referred for further consideration after the Congress. So we had suggestions which really should be included in the operational rules and policies. For instance, the signatories to the bank account, appointment of worker auditors to accompany the treasurer, stand-in orders for running Congress, and setting up of a youth council and committee. So there are a whole range of things that the new working committee is going to have to deal with. It's going to be very hard work. And then there were other suggestions which could go in policy resolutions, or they could be a constitutional amendment in the next Congress when we've had time to debate it. Some of the big issues you can't rush through. So these are some of them. Interesting one, this is probably a policy. Will we recognize the new types of workers working from home, such as teleworkers? Will we recognize them as home workers? If you remember, Marty referred to all these new home workers out there, especially since the lockdowns. So this is a big question because our constituency is not the professional classes or the so it's a big question that's going to confront us. Should affiliates or regions commit to forming national networks where they do not exist? So again, this is something we need to discuss because there's not consensus on this. The different regions have got different experiences of forming national networks. So we need to discuss that, whether that's a requirement or a policy, so this is another discussion for the working committee to take forward with the affiliates. Should representatives on the executive committee be home-based workers and not technical people? Now, this is also a very big question. And I must say my experience, it's come up with domestic workers, it's come up with waste pickers. So it's not an easy question because again, different unions and different organizations have a different approach to this. And should we extend the number of office bearers? If so, what and how many office bearers positions should be there? There were some suggestions on this from more than one region, but they weren't the same suggestions. So this is something that we need to discuss. And if we get an agreement, it's possible that we'd want an amendment. So I just wanted to point those out to make sure people didn't feel that we'd missed their points. And very good points they are too.